All right, hello everyone. Boy, I've been waiting, chomping at the bit for a week for this webinar. I can't wait to hear what these experts have to say. I'm Richard Hoffman. I'm the founding director of the Practice Experts Collaborative, and we have really put together an action-packed hour for you to hear the visions of these healthcare really visionaries that have charted their own paths in healthcare. They have gone deep in their subjects, and they're charting out the road ahead for practitioners, for practices, and most importantly for patients. So just a really exciting time. You know, the theme of of this webinar is careers, practices, and patient impact in post-pharma healthcare. And we specifically named it that because, you know, many people are calling this era post-pharma or post-modern, because more and more people are coming to the realization that really, you know, we've been sold a lot of aggressive marketing for the last 70 years, really since, you know, just after World War II from the pharmaceutical industry. And, you know, along the way, what that pushed to the side was literally hundreds and thousands of years of wisdom that we had about diagnosis and treatment and prevention and cure and recovery from disease. And so this panel and their colleagues and the people the kindred spirits that we have in the Practice Experts Collaborative are really reaching back and gathering all that wisdom, bringing it forward, and grounding it in science, the science of today, to really show us the path to really, as Dr. Ernst was just talking about a few minutes ago, getting to the root cause of issues and really curing complex diseases and chronic illnesses. So just very excited. First, we have to do a little of the usual Zoom housekeeping. So you're other than the speakers on the panel, your microphones are muted. Certainly use the chat feature on the right. I'm going to be serving up questions to the panel later, so use that liberally. Also, this session is recorded, so I want you to know that. So we'll be able to have that available for playback later. And time is of the essence with our panel today. They've got busy schedules. We were lucky enough to get them in here, but after they're done and they go back to their busy day, I'm happy to stick around for 10 minutes or whatever and give anybody who wants it a tour of the collaborative and show you the pretty amazing things that we're doing in there. So without further ado, let's get started. Albert Einstein told us that curiosity is the surest path to genius. And curiosity is one of the things that our panel has in common today. These people have gotten very curious about their areas of expertise. They've gone deep in those subjects, and they've acquired information and knowledge and ultimately wisdom about these things that are so important to our healthcare. And another thing that this group has in common is that they're not just keeping that stuff to themselves. They have chosen, each in their own way, to take that information out to other people, other practitioners in the field, to their patients more broadly, and again, share their knowledge like they're doing on this webinar today, and like they do in the Practice Experts Collaborative. So, we're delighted to have them. So let me do some introductions. Then I'm going to shut up and get out of the way and let the panel share their thoughts. So first, our moderator, Amanda LaPlant, is a certified integrative health coach, and she's also the creator and host of her own very popular radio and more recently TV show, Get Real to Heal. And on her shows, Amanda regularly interviews people from a wide range of viewpoints in health and wellness. And we couldn't have selected, frankly, a better moderator for today's discussion. Dr. Aaron Ernst leads a prominent functional medicine practice in Charlotte, North Carolina. He also shares his knowledge nationally with his radio show and podcast called Ask Dr. Ernst. And on his show, he covers a broad range of topics around solutions to health challenges that are deeply grounded, again, in research and practical application. He first came to my attention, I guess about a month or so ago, when I watched a webcast of his on COVID-19. And frankly, I just mentioned to him before we got on the air that really everybody in America should be forced to sit down and watch that video, because we would be in a much different place right now. So this wisdom could not be more timely. Dr. J. Dunn, speaking of research-grounded health solutions, Dr. Dunn's one of the world's top experts in epigenetics and genetic research. She's the founder and CEO of My Happy Genes, which provides a range of genetic testing and reporting solutions. She wasn't happy with the genetic tests that were available on the market and said, well, heck, I'm going to go create my own. And true to her entrepreneurial spirit, that's what she did. So she also founded and leads an education company called Wholistic Methylation, which trains healthcare practitioners on the best method to utilize gene expression to solve complex problems with patients, chronic illnesses, and difficult diseases, those kind of things. And in fact, she's got her latest course is just starting tomorrow. So anybody who's interested in diving deep in that knowledge, I think she's probably got still a room available in her course. Dr. Paul Rattay, a naturopathic physician who runs a well-respected clinical practice in Minnesota. He's also the associate professor of clinical nutrition at Northwestern Health Sciences University. I first heard Dr. Rattay speak about 18 months ago in an integrative healthcare conference in Minneapolis. And my first thought was, wow, we've got to get this guy's voice heard, a lot more broadly. And he and I have had a lot of conversations about that since then. And so today we get, one of those chances to hear his voice. And then last but not least, Robin Stewart. Robin Stewart is the co-founder and CEO of Mind Body Talent. Mind Body Talent is an organization that does executive recruitment solely in functional, integrative, and lifestyle medicine. And she and her team lead the recruitment and placement of physicians and advanced practice providers really across the country. So she's got an objective view really across disciplines in healthcare, across practices, across the nation, that really gives her kind of some really interesting insight that I'm hoping she's going to share some of that with you today. So a huge welcome to all of you. Thank you for sharing your time with us. The introduction's behind us. I'm going to turn it over to Amanda LaPlant and let you all get on your way.
So much, Richard, for having us here today. I'm excited about this discussion, and you had asked me to share just a minute or two about my own health journey, which I think speaks to really what we're all here for. Over the course of about 20 years, I was diagnosed with 7 different autoimmune diseases, in addition to ADD, anxiety, depression, and even at one point a mood disorder. What I found was, after seeing doctor after doctor after doctor in the conventional system, acquiring 18 active prescriptions by the age of 32, having 6 specialists in a primary care position that I was seeing monthly, and being on bed rest for 2 years while I had a young son and a burgeoning career, I realized that there were things that I could do to bring my health back into alignment, to rebuild health in my body instead of just masking my symptoms, and that a lot of the issues that I was suffering with were simple products of my diet and lifestyle. And when I found out that that was the case, and that I didn't have to live a life on tons of medications and, meds or bed kind of existence, I got a little angry. And then I got a little empowered. And I decided to ask one of the functional medicine doctors that I was fortunate enough to cross paths with, who helped me to change my trajectory, how could I fit into this new realm that I see developing, this integrative health spectrum? And she recommended health coaching. So over the last 4 years, I've developed a pretty busy private practice and have now transitioned into working with an MD, actually 2 MDs and a nurse practitioner here at Catalyst Pain Management in Chesterfield, and really, really love what I'm doing. And I am constantly amazed, and blessed to have the conversation with people who have never heard that there's another way to approach health and wellness, and change their trajectory as well. So I'm excited to pick the brains of some brilliant folks that are in this exact realm today, and grateful for the opportunity. Thanks again. Dr. Ernst, can we start with you? Since you've recently addressed the hot topic of COVID-19, tell us a little bit about what led you down that path and what you found along the way.
So my God, that's a big question. So I guess it starts off with just, here I am in Charlotte, North Carolina. I don't know if you guys know it or not, we have a very restrictive governor. And, the orders came out, stay at home, don't leave. And I have this massive practice and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with all these people I take care of? So I called the board and they're like, actually, you're in the exemption, so go work. And here I am, and we're just plowing through. Yes, we saw a drop in patient volume just because people were afraid and whatnot. But, a couple months go by, actually it was a couple weeks go by, and, we're doing it no different than we were. And then all of a sudden they come in and like, okay, now you must sanitize everything from head to toe, move all the chairs out of your waiting room, 6-foot distance blockers, shields, masks. And I'm like, wait a second, why did we do this in the beginning? And I started questioning all these executive orders. It made no sense. And then, then it finally came out like everyone has to wear a mask at all times. And it started with me going, wait a second. Do you guys know the particle size of COVID-19? I mean, there was a New England Journal of Medicine article published, I think it was January, February of 2019 that said, or 2020 actually, it said, it's like 1 point something microns, which is basically microscopic. And even the best surgical mask on the face of the earth does 0.1 microns. And they won't give surgical masks to the public because we would diminish the supply to the hospitals. And what are we going to use? So they started recommending disposable masks. And I'm like, well, hold on, that's 300 microns. This thing is 0.1. And I was doing a conversation with Dr. Buttar and some other people that are in this area. And he's like, it's like putting up a chain link fence to stop mosquitoes. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, what? How come people are being blinded to this? So I started digging just because that's what I am. I'm an investigator, a researcher. I love this. In my medical background, I worked as a cancer researcher, National Cancer Institutes of Health, doing phase 3 clinical trials. I mean, I know numbers and graphs and labs and stuff. So I used to start pulling data. PubMed, it's public, but you have to know how to read it and you have to know how to use it. And doctors are shaking their heads like, oh, yeah, PubMed. But, you may be amazed how many MDs you throw articles to them and they're like, I've never read this. I have no idea. So I started just looking into it and I'm like, the recommendations they're telling the public are backwards and upside down, and it's actually going to cause more problems if you use a mask. And that blacklisted me on all social media. I got kicked off Facebook because I was saying, don't wear a mask. So I calmed down from the masks, and then all of a sudden it starts coming around that this vaccine is going to save the planet. And so guess what I do? I start investigating, okay, how is it made? What's it made with? How's it produced? And I'm like, holy cow, it's genetically modified recombinant mRNA to make the body make a protein that looks like the COVID capsule. Do you know what happens when you increase viral capsules in a human body that are empty? The immune system is going to see it as if it's an active viral infection. You're going to push people into a cytokine storm, and you're going to have the same problem we saw in Africa with the dengue vaccine when they created an ADE response. And, physicians in here might know what that is, but you have a delayed antibody response, and you actually get more susceptible for dying when you get the disease. So you vaccinate, and then the people who get the infection the next time die. And I'm like, am I the only one that sees this? So I found out there's 3 companies producing it, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer. And if you guys have seen the recent stuff, they're pulling a lot of the trials because A, people are dying. B, this one woman had severe transverse myelitis from getting the second dose. And C, the current, I think it was like this last week, they shut down the entire Pfizer study saying we can't do this anymore because the side effects were insane. And you've got
Lilly just announced yesterday.
yeah, just
paused
literally
theirs yesterday.
like I think it was like a day or two ago. So I've got patients who are like, no way on God's green earth am I letting them put that in my arm. And I'm like, but what if an executive order comes out that says you can't shop, you can't eat, you can't do anything without having this vaccine? So I just prayed about it and I said, what am I supposed to do with this? And I came up with this idea of like, I'll just do a webinar for my patient base. I have a lot of patients, and I'll teach them how to become their own vaccine, how to build a vaccine in your body as if we're trying to build health. So I came up with this concept a couple years ago that there's really three roots, like the three major stems of all disease is an inappropriate functioning nervous system. And there's so much research behind the ANS, the PNS, its modulation, its regulation, its communication, the GALT, the gut brain, all of it. And I'm like, it's all driven by the nerve system. So my original chiropractic degree, my first doctorate was in chiropractic. So, here I am a chiropractor. I'm like, all right, chiropractic is going to save the planet. And then I realized people don't understand what chiropractic really is. They think it's neck pain, back pain, headaches, car accidents, slips and falls. They get adjusted till their headache goes away. That's not chiropractic. So I had to figure out how on earth can I teach people what real chiropractic is. So I got on the radio. It was called Ask Dr. Ernst because I was going to say, call in with a question. I got headaches and I'll show you how to fix it. Go to your chiropractor and ask him to take this x-ray and look at this vertebra, blah, 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 blah. Well, then it turned into people calling in with, I got heart disease. I've got diabetes. What do I do? And I'm like, go to a chiropractor, Well, then I became a functional medicine practitioner. So I got licensed to do functional medicine. And I started realizing like, whoa, wait a second. Okay, the nerve is important, but my God, this thing called the microbiome and the epigenetics is huge. It's this beast that not a lot of people are talking about. I did a training program with Dr. Josh Axe, who maybe some of you know, and he's all the gut guy, right? Dr. Axe, right? Great. So he kind of started opening my mind to this concept of you fix the microbiome and all else follows. So it's like, well, wait a second, you fix the spine and all else follows is what chiropractors say. And the functional guys say you fix the gut and all else follows. I was like, what if we do both? So I started integrating the two of them and I started seeing huge improvements until I started cracking open that worm of toxic heavy metals, mercury, lead, aluminum, arsenic, barium. And then I had to add a third leg. I'm like, okay, get the metals and the toxins out and all else follows. And I have seen just here, you do all three of those, find out your toxicity profiles, you get the gut under control, use the epigenetics that we know about with, thank God, organics testing and stuff like that, get the spine fixed, and literally all else follows. So I came up with what's called the 3 pillars of health from my perspective. Now, there's so many books on pillars of health and here's how to heal. But I wanted to just whittle it down to like, if you do these and nothing else, like technically, if you just do these, you're going to heal. And 2011, we started branding this, we started doing it. And here we are in 2020. And I mean, I don't have an opening for 5.5 weeks. I have patients who come from Tennessee to Charlotte. I have people calling from other countries, Israel, Ukraine. Oh my God, like we're doing Zoom calls with people trying to help them heal. So there's a huge need for it. But the whole COVID thing came because I was just like, is no one going to speak up against this and say something? So I thought, okay, if I can teach people, if you can get your spine corrected, if you can get your microbiome rebuilt and you get your toxicity to be as low as you can, you are a vaccine. You guys know the difference between germ theory and host theory. You do. So I started teaching people, the body's designed to heal itself. And if you're working in all systems and COVID actually got in you, it wouldn't be a problem if you have strong immunity. And then guess what? Then we find out all this stuff about vitamin D and the connections and all that stuff. The research is coming out showing that's all true.
And thank goodness the research is starting to come out and there are strong voices like yours starting to get out in the media, on the media, take charge. So you have, clearly a very busy and successful clinical practice, but and you've talked a little bit about the inspiration behind Ask Dr. Ernst, the platform that you've been creating online and in social media and on the radio. I know from experience, how much work that can be. Talk a little bit about what inspired you to take that route.
Well, it's almost kind of like, there's 2 types of people in the world. There's the type who sees a problem and says someone else is going to solve that. And they just sit back and wait. And then you have the ones who are like, I got to do this. Kind of like, how I've heard other people here like, hey, the genetic testing out there is terrible. So I'm going to start my own company. Maybe it's the entrepreneurialness inside of me. I just signed a deal last week to be on NBC, the Today Show here in Charlotte. So it's like, no one else is doing it. So it's kind of like, what was the inspiration? I don't know. Why not? Like, no one else is going to. So I think it truly came from, I mean, I have so many people that come in and would ask me, hey, they're developing a vaccine. Should I get it? And I'm like, no, but why are you even asking me this? Don't you know how bad this is? And then I have people coming in, hey, I have diabetes and my doctor wants to put me on this drug. What do you think? And I'm like, no, but don't you know this? So Ask Dr. Ernst got birthed with the idea that so many people kept asking me questions. Dr. Ernst, what about this? Dr. Ernst, what about this? That I said, you know what? I'm just going to go as close to nationwide as I can and let people ask me a question, and I will show you the holistic alternative approach so you become your own doctor and you heal yourself. That's our goal.
I love it. So on the subject of epigenetics, Dr. Dunn, can you tell us a little bit about your path in epigenetics? And you've got a very successful clinical practice as well. What was the motivation to pivot into educating other practitioners about that particular field of science?
That's a really good question. I think maybe all people who are in practice can relate to those patients that we can't get well. The ones that we think about at night. It's like, oh my God, what am I missing? What is the missing piece here? And I had a great practice. It was very successful. I had over a year waiting list, but I still had people that, I couldn't figure out. And I knew there was something missing. So it really, and in my own health as well, I had chronic fatigue syndrome, and I knew how to manage it, and I knew how to deal with my depression, but I never really felt like I had the real solution to it. And so I kept looking, and as soon as I figured out what was going on in the genetic field and the epigenetics, it gave me those answers. And I started to have incredible success with those chronic patients that I couldn't have success with, and myself as well. It fixed my chronic fatigue syndrome within a couple of weeks after almost 40 years of dealing with it. And a lifetime of depression was gone almost immediately when I figured out how to work with my genetics and with everything I had tried, all the emotional work. I'm a chiropractor, functional medicine, I did it. Emotional work of all kinds. Nothing worked for me until I got into my genetics. And then once I started seeing the results we were having with MS and ALS and Parkinson's and, some of the really difficult cases and autoimmune cases, I was like, oh man, I gotta teach doctors how to do this because this is stunning. So.
Well, and thank you for the work that you're doing, because that's been an absolutely tremendous component of my own recovery, and is breaking at least 4 generations that I know of in my family of basically, what we called the Eddings, my maiden name, the Eddings curse.
Oh.
The fact that I'm standing here at age 40, not on disability and not enduring a life of pain and suffering is pretty remarkable to me. So, I guess my question would be then, can you share with us what you see ahead on the road in the field of epigenetics and how you see your work impacting other healthcare disciplines and practitioners? I know you shared a little bit about that already, but I'd love to know the trajectory that you see ahead.
Well, I think the genetic testing is getting better and better. And, I did kind of go off the usual path that people take, which is 23andMe and Ancestry, getting the results on that and trying to work with that. And I realized how many genes we weren't able to get to through their testing. So we're using 700,000 SNPs with our genetic testing at a private lab. And that's the other piece, is that, a lot of people were scared of getting their genetics tested because of the privacy issues. And so we decided to go with, a private lab and do all the genes that I wanted to see in there. It's going to be a little more expensive, but well worth it. And I think the price will come down because genetic testing is just getting cheaper and cheaper. But the real breakthrough is, a lot of people think it's like, okay, I have the MTHFR gene, I have to take methylfolate. And that is so far from the truth. It's the understanding of the interplay of genes that's critical. And when we look at, the hub genes, the genes that affect our physiology, like how we make dopamine and how we break dopamine down, how we make serotonin, how we break it down, and the interplay of those genes and how much they affect our personality and mood, that's one area that I'm really passionate about. But just understanding the interplay, and that's what we try to do with our algorithm is get, this gene and understand the reaction of that, and looking at the epigenetics. Are they even expressing that genetic variant? You can have a gene and have it not expressed. So then we can get really accurate with their diet, their lifestyle, and supplementation. And man, it turns things around. So I want to plant a seed. I know this is a long response to that answer, but here's the seed, that it's a paradigm shift. I used to teach in functional medicine. I used to go after the viruses or the bacteria, the heavy metals. I don't do that anymore. I get the body doing it, and it's so much easier, and it's so much more elegant. It gets right in there, gets that detox pathway turned on, or gets your immune system maximized, so you don't have to hunt the viruses or the Lyme disease or all of those things that I did for 30 years. So it's much more elegant. It's much more in alignment with the chiropractic philosophy of the body. The power that made the body can heal the body. You just give it the right tools to do it and go. So
I'm glad that you said that. That was one major turning point for me as I was on bed rest. I remember having that thought, and almost as if it was whispered in my ear. If my body created this disease, perhaps it can heal it as well. And I think that's so eloquently put. Yeah. Dr. Rattay, am I saying your last name correctly, sir?
Got it.
Fantastic.
Rattay.
As LaPlante, LaPlantia, LaPlant, all of those things, I always like to double check.
Yeah, or Ratty, right? That's what we say in the families. P.
Okay,
Ratty.
Ratty? All right.
Ratty.
Dr. Rattay, you've been balancing your work in your clinical practice with your role as an educator for many years. Can you tell us what motivated you in those directions?
Yeah, so it's a science and art piece, I think. I'm a why guy. Like, you can tell me something, but I need to know why. And, from an early age, I always had this fear of being wrong, right? So math was my deal because I could always know that I got the right answer. And somewhere along the way, I realized that I'm not sure that there's a right answer, but I at least have to investigate those answers. And as a naturopath, I'm kind of grounded in I went to school, we learned how to use supplements, we learned homeopathy, we learned herbal medicine. That's in our toolbox, we get it from day one. But there still wasn't really, from my perspective, a healthy sort of, why does this work? Like, what are we doing? What's the philosophy? And so I start out as a clinician, and I'm kind of, I have my little black book, and I have all my magic herbs for asthma and these kinds of things that I kept in school. And then somewhere along the way, I stumbled upon teaching, and I got into teaching, and, I learned that saturated fat was a bad guy, and, all the lipid hypothesis that was pretty much, standard dogma there. And then I get into the science. I start teaching nutrition, right? If you want to learn something, go and teach it. And I start reading the literature. I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't match. There's problems here. And that's, early on, this is the early 2000s, and then Gary Taub's book came out and kind of put the nail in that coffin. And just the idea that, wait a minute, we need some healthy skepticism here. So I'm teaching, and I'm spending that time really exploring that. And then I take that back to the clinic, right? Because there's always the science part. And then you see a patient, and then you're like, well, but that doesn't work, right? Or how do we then apply that? So patients really keep me honest, but students keep me on my toes, if that makes sense. So it's really about, like I said, a systematic thinker that, everybody's an N of one, and taking that N of one and trying to figure out what piece fits, what doesn't fit so well, and then really looking at that science sort of as a structure rather than as a right or wrong. And I think that's where, I kind of had that to begin with, that I didn't really have the science, right? So part of I think in my training is that I didn't have real grounding in how to read the medical literature and do that. But, if you want to learn to read medical literature, go read 100 articles, you'll figure it out, right? But it's just experience and time. So it's really sort of about, pulling those things together. It's kind of like, you see a Picasso painting, right? And you think, oh, I'm going to paint like Picasso. No, you got to start at the ground floor. You got to learn how to draw. You got to learn to draw what you see, and then eventually you can take it somewhere. So it's, again, that science as a structure, and then the art to really now start to paint that canvas for patients.
I love the way you put that. And, I think it's a product of the 20th century mindset, right? Or really something that perhaps originally stemmed out of the Industrial Revolution. We wanted to create a system. And to create a system, we need to put things in boxes. And the next thing you know, we've lost the art. It's just become a standard process.
Right.
And I love that functional and integrative is this approach to medicine is really bringing it back to being the N of one and the art that it is. So it's nice to be a canvas of that. Again, thank you all for what you do. Okay, so from my understanding, naturopathic doctors are grounded deeply in the power of the human body to heal itself. And what is perhaps different about the naturopathic approach to diagnosing and treating patients? And also, how do you see the various disciplines of holistic healthcare starting to merge in any way as you're watching these similar principles that we're all starting to be grounded in start to unfold?
Yeah, so it's functional medicine. It's interesting. So I got involved in functional medicine after naturopathic school. It's funny, I go to functional medicine conferences. I'm like, but we learned this in naturopathic school. So it's almost like functional medicine is now the catchword. But again, it's a philosophy, right? So it's a philosophy that draws a lot of different people together to say, hey, we're like-minded, right? And I look at that and I say, for every individual, all the clinicians that do this type of work, I would say there's that aha moment that happens, right? There's that time that says, hey, you know what? Something's not right. I need to look in a different direction, and whether it's your own personal health or something that happened, right? And then that aha moment happens, and then you start to look for those alternatives. Now, for me, I guess I was started with that and then had to come around to, kind of saying, okay, I'm going to ask why. I'm going to ask those questions and to really try to figure out how to put these things together and how to work with other people, right? So the idea is that I learned supplements, I learned functional testing, and honestly, now 23 years later, I use a lot less functional testing. I use a lot less supplements. I'm a lifestyle guy, and I'm sort of gifted that way in that I teach more or less 3/4 of the time, and then I see patients, so that if I don't see patients, I don't have to see patients. So there's not really that financial incentive there that I have to do that, but I want to do that. But the idea is that I really focused on lifestyle. So it's, to me, health is life is a gift, health is a choice. Choice is what you think, how you move, what you eat. And I can give you the latest, greatest supplement. I mean, I can give you adrenal support and detox support, and not that those aren't helpful. But again, how do you get out of the way and let the body do what it's trying to do? The body heals itself, right? I mean, on some level, we just want to sort of redirect it, right? And how do you encourage that health philosophy in somebody rather than this disease philosophy? I think we really need to move away from, diagnosing disease or symptoms and that kind of thing and say, hey, these are people. And these are people that have a story. They have a story of their health. They have a story of their life. They have a story of all these things. And how do we sort of modify that or massage it and move it in one direction or the other, right? I mean, it's like the nutrition wars, right? Nutrition is a philosophy. I mean, we can find evidence for whatever side you're on, right? So I used to be low fat when I started, then I became, high fat, and now it's like all the ketogenic and this kind of thing. And now I'm like kind of post keto, right? So I don't know that keto is the answer to everything. So it's not necessarily that low fat or low carb is right or wrong, but how do you apply that in an individual, and how do you work with them to put that into their narrative structure and help move them forward, right? Redirect that. That's a very powerful metaphor, and really develop that resiliency of not saying, oh, I have to stay low carb, or I have to be low fat, or I have to be, this type of thing, but developing that resiliency so that they don't fall apart when they get COVID, right? For example.
I think it's just a reflection of kind of micro and macro, right? We're reframing and we're helping to redirect in the lifestyle of our patients, and we're also reframing and redirecting in medicine as a whole. And I think it's just such a beautiful thing. Thank you so much, Dr. Rattay, for sharing your thoughts.
Sure.
Robin Stewart, you're on the phone every day with practitioners from all over the country, every flavor, all over the place. And that gives you a unique and objective perspective, I think, about what's going on in healthcare practices and the careers of the practitioners. Can you give us a taste of what you're seeing in the field of holistic care at this time?
Wow. Well, what I'm seeing right now, first of all, Amanda, thank you for moderating this panel. Everybody that spoke today, I have really big shoes to fill. Like after what everybody else said, I'm going to talk about recruiting. I do have a really interesting perspective because I see both sides of it. I see everything from the providers, what they're looking at, what they're focused on, and it's always, delivering patient care and doing the best that they can to be able to, help their bodies heal and giving them the tools. And then I have the practices that are looking for these providers that, it is not easy to find. And I think right now, we're living in a moment when, functional medicine, as Dr. Rattay mentioned, that, functional medicine in a lot of ways is really the standard of care, and everybody's measuring their own data in certain ways. And we got little people, biohacking in functional medicine and just trying to make sense of everything. So COVID has really helped bring on a massive, change in the way that a lot of providers are looking at functional medicine. Because working in primary care and in family medicine, nobody has the pill, right? So they don't have the answers. And a lot of them are looking and listening to other doctors that are having great success with nutrition and lifestyle changes. And I'm seeing a lot of providers coming into functional and integrative medicine, crossing over from conventional medicine. So that's really refreshing. And a lot of them are asking me, where do I go? How do I get started? Where, what kind of support system is there? Where are the fellowships? So those kinds of calls come in every day. I get emails like that nonstop. And MindBody Talent is in a really unique position because we're really the only ones out there doing what we're doing. And I came to MindBody Talent the same way all of you got into functional medicine, really dealing with my own health issues and finding pathways of health that made sense to me in ways that got me off medication and finally healing and healthy. So the providers a lot of them are the same way. So I think that when I see this influx of providers that are coming from conventional medicine making that change, it's exciting, but at the same time it's terrifying because they don't have the functional medicine background to be able to fill all of these roles there are. So it creates another opportunity on the clinician side or the clinic side that they're looking for the providers, but there's a long list of people that are a short list of people that are qualified enough to fill those roles.
Gotcha. So what do you see on the road ahead? And I think, what are the challenges of supplying practices with the best practitioners to suit the needs of the patients in this day and age?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, the days of, a provider or a practice or a clinic calling me and saying, hey, can you find me a functional medicine MD or DO or a mid-level that, is certified with the IFM and, they've got this much clinical experience and this much practice opportunities already in their, in their world. But what the problem is that these centers and clinics are not willing to just do salary and benefits. They want something a lot more creative. They're looking at hybrid models, just like they're looking at, membership and cash pay for their practices, moving away from the insurance models. The doctors look very different than they did before. They're not just signing on, getting a salary and benefits. So they're looking for me to provide them with creative solutions that are going to attract providers to the practice, whether that's, the name themselves coming into an established practice or a geography or a location. But I think that, one of the biggest challenges is kind of making this a win-win for everybody. So a lot of them are looking to me to help them solve that because they know that I'm at ground zero talking to these providers. I know what they want. And then I know what the clients are needing to, put this together. As far as the challenge on the clinician side, or on the clinician side, is that most of the time they don't do a great job marketing themselves, and a lot of times they're really hard to find. especially if I know they're the one that I'm looking for or I want, but I have a hard time finding them or getting in contact with them. So, they really need to do things to elevate their personal brand. They need to get exposure on social media. They need to, be in groups like the Practice Experts Collaborative, where there's, resources available that can help them. All of the other social media groups. So I think that the biggest challenge is, helping them understand how important it is that they elevate their brand and they make themselves recruitable.
And I think one thing I would add to that, I love what you shared there. The opportunity that we have with integrative and functional medicine is to really go back to what doctor originally meant in part, right, which is teacher. And when we think about building our own personal brand, sometimes that can be intimidating for a lot of physicians, a lot of practitioners in general.
Right.
But, if we can step outside of that box, realize that we are our own personal brand, right? But really that passion to serve and that passion to teach, if we can let that fuel our fire, it gets a whole lot easier to get out there. So love what you're doing. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. And thank you to all of our panelists. I've thoroughly enjoyed our discussion. Would love to do this again sometime, Richard, and I'm going to hand it on to you.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm seriously, I've gotten chills a couple of times listening to this, because this is just, phenomenal beyond what I even anticipated. Knowing who the speakers were, still the stuff that came through, it was just amazing. And this speaks directly to why we built the Practice Experts Collaborative and what we're looking to achieve with it, because there is a ton of confusion in the market. It's a huge battleground, frankly, against the last 70 years of very aggressive, very well-funded pharmaceutical marketing, telling us, grinding it into us that there's a pill for every ill and believe your doctor and that kind of thing. And thankfully, more and more of the world is waking up to, hey, that's not necessarily the case. And what a lot of people don't really kind of realize is that this thing that gets pushed on us as conventional medicine or traditional medicine is not traditional at all. It's about 7 decades old. And when what the people on this call and this panel and their colleagues and the practice experts that are in our collaborative realize that, holy cow, this, as every panelist said here, this is stuff that goes back to the art and science of health, and it goes back to traditions and wisdom that is centuries or millennia old. And that's what I see folks like Dr. Ratte and Dr. Dunn and Dr. Ernst doing, is they're tapping back into those ancient pieces of wisdom, bringing it forward, but then grounding it in the science and to give confidence to people, because this is really about confidence. It's about confidence in the patient with their practitioner, and it's about confidence with the practitioner that they're saying and doing the right things. And if I could put one word on what we're doing, is it's an underpinning practitioners and patients with that confidence to move forward and not just take the pill or the 12 or 15 pills that they get prescribed. So I'm just delighted by what I've heard today. I want to open up the mics if anybody wants to speak. I know I see, one of the things that crossed my mind another time, Joe Coburn and Ralda Georges are on the collaborative building their own community for health coaches. And I saw a lot of head nodding while people were talking. Think about the collaborative as a community of practices. And that means health coaches and naturopaths and chiropractors can each build their own community in there, speak about the challenges about what they're finding in their profession, and then bringing those things out to the broader community to say, hey, here's the right way to work with a health coach. here's how to blend a practice that has, you know, a conventional medicine doctor in it, a naturopath in it, and a health coach and a nurse practitioner. And here's how we get that all to work together in a community. So just, you know, that's why this thing is here. That's why we created, to elevate careers, to elevate practices, and most importantly, to elevate patient care and efficacy from all of you folks. Anybody else have any other questions before we sign off? There wasn't a lot in the chat box to go back to. There's an interesting set of conversations about, hey, we got to fight this thing of getting, you know, perhaps having mandatory vaccinations, and I agree that's a path that we should help follow. I mean, I'll just put it frankly. I mean, we built this community not just to do the things that I talked about, but also to address the system as a whole. We can't just solve pieces of the problem. We're starting at the grassroots with practitioners working with their patients. We're underpinning those folks with the knowledge and wisdom they need to do that, you know, with the highest quality of care. But we know we've got to address insurance. We've got to address education about pharmaceuticals, and like Dr. Ernst was doing about these vaccines that are getting pushed down our throat. I mean, I worked in and around the pharmaceutical industry in the new drug development process for 9 years. I know what that process is like, and there's no freaking way that you can rush a vaccine to market. That's why we're seeing each of the pharmaceutical companies dropping off. Guess what? Because they're having these adverse reactions and hurting and killing people. And that's what's going to happen. So, I mean, we're here for the long term to build up this community that supports these practitioners, supports the practices, provides better care for patients, but ultimately addresses piece by piece by piece the system as a whole, and gets us to a place where we're delivering real solid care for patients. Anybody, before we sign off, anybody have any other thoughts or questions? Joe?
No, I just really love what you're saying. I love what the collaborative is doing. I think health coaches have a huge role to play. Doctors have, you know, a ton of patients on their roster, and, you know, your patients need that hand holding. They're lost in a system, you know, where they've been told for 70 years, right? That just take the pill, and it's not your diet, it's not your lifestyle, it's not those things. And, you know, I think together we can reach so many more people. So I think it's fantastic, and I can't wait to, you know, meet all you wonderful practitioners and, you know, have those conversations about, you know, where do you see those gaps in your practice? How do you see us working together? You know, how do we get health coaches that, I mean, a lot of us have functional medicine training. We have, you know, we didn't just get, you know, a 3-month health coaching degree. You know, we can speak your language. We can really link arms with you and, you know, have those technical conversations about, you know, what are the genetics of your patients? What do we need to, you know, how do we teach them to shop at the grocery store and pick those foods and do those things? Because that's what we're here for. We're here to take those 2 a.m. text messages and, you know, help people figure it out. Yeah.
So, I mean, what we really, I mean, I think I haven't talked with anybody who's been in the collaborative that isn't as jazzed as you are about it. And the question becomes, how do we get more and more? We got to spread the word. I mean, this is a new entity. It's a new brand. It's unknown. We know because we've been in it now, some of you for weeks, or close to a month. You know where our heart is on this thing and what our passion is. We've just got to get that word out to more and more and more people. I want to see 1,000 people in the collaborative. I put a note out the other day and some messaging on social media of impact 1 million patients a year. And I wanted to say that to grab people's attention, but that's a real possibility. We have 70 members in the collaborative right now. If one of you shares a piece of wisdom that those people can use, a typical practitioner sees what, 1,000 patients a year. That's 70,000 patients you impacted just with the people that are in the collaborative right now. once we get to the collaborative to 1,000 members, you can literally impact 1 million patients a year with one piece of wisdom that you drop into this pond, and it goes out to everybody. That's our vision and that's our mission. So, you know, tell everybody about this thing, and you know that's where, you know, you've got your trusted your networks of people who know and trust you. We're a new entity, so you know, pass the word along, and let's get this thing up to that 1,000 numbers, so we're impacting more and more patients and changing the face of healthcare. I mean, we talk about revolutionizing healthcare. It's really, that's what we have to do. It's gone off on a bad path for the last 70 years. Not that every pharmaceutical product is bad. I'm not saying that. There is use up for it. But I found a really interesting article written in 1959 by a doctor. It was in the New York Times saying, do we need all of these drugs? 1959. And we've got a lot more. We have an avalanche of drugs since then, along with chronic illnesses and things that have cropped up that we've never seen on this planet before. You know, so let's get this thing righted with a combination, as Dr. Bate said, the right combination of science and art to enable people and to, you know, get their bodies to heal themselves and turn their bodies into natural vaccines instead of taking some poison that gets pushed on us, God forbid, by the government, that we have to take it.
Yeah, and I think I don't remember who said it. Maybe it was Amanda about getting, or Robin, about the marketing behind our wellness practitioners. We have a ton of heart behind our movement, and we just want to help everyone. But actually having people be able to communicate who they are and what they can do, I think, is a huge gap in what we do. I mean, it's just, we don't know how to communicate that to people. And
Joe, to your point, I think I commented about this on another interview that I did, but the challenge that the health coaches have, in my opinion, and what I hear from physicians and physician offices, is that they're having a really hard time communicating their value of what they're bringing to the practice. So right. The doctor looks at, I shouldn't say the doctor, but the clinical practice looks at, how is this impacting my bottom line? Is this an expense creator or a revenue generator? So if you're in a position where you can bring your value and show them that you're a revenue generator and not an expense creator, you know, that's got to be first and foremost of how you're going to be able to sell yourself to a practice. Amanda, you can speak to this because you just joined, you know, you just locked arms with one of the top functional medicine doctors here in St. Louis. And you know, maybe talk to the other health coaches about, you know, how you sold yourself, because that was a sales job.
I think that might be another discussion for another day. That could be a longer panel discussion, perhaps. So I would somewhat digress. What I will say is, I do think that, you know, I built my brand basically on helping other people to elevate theirs. Here in the St. Louis market, I found that there was not a media platform that was effective in allowing practitioners in the functional and integrative space a way to get their voices out. And what I found was, as I sat down for networking meetings, which is the other key piece to building my brand, and authentically connecting one-on-one with practitioners as much as I could get their time, you know, I found they were really hungry for that opportunity, and they had fantastic stories usually about the reason, that moment, that pivotal moment when they decided to become functional or integrative in their practice. You know, whether that was prior to even going and getting their medical education, or, you know, or whatever certification. I interview all kinds of practitioners. Or if that was midstream, for instance, like Dr. Batwell here at Catalyst Pain Management, you know, who's a Cleveland Clinic grad, but pre-Mark Hyman days. So a lot of her training in nutrition and, you know, holistic type approaches and modalities really came from her own injury. When she was, you know, she crushed her L4 and L5, really probably shouldn't be walking, but is the Energizer Bunny. She's constantly buzzing around here and doing things that she's astounding. And that really, her recovery came from some pretty unconventional approaches, despite her conventional training. So that really opened her mind. And as she went down that rabbit hole, she started to realize that she didn't have the time as a clinician to have the conversations that she needed to have and really go deeper the way that she needed to. And that was when she became open to the idea of health coaching. So I think it's having those conversations, having the opportunity to have those conversations. Again, I created that space for myself by realizing, I had a background, a master's in communication. And before I had my traumatic health journey happen, and then made my pivot and went back to school and became a health coach. And so I decided to put that to use. The opportunity presented to have a radio show, and I built a platform by simply allowing other people to shine their stars brightly. I just provided a sky. So, I think that as far as communicating the value within a practice, there are so many ways that health coaches can become engaged. I think the tricky thing is, as the National Board of Medical Examiners has now partnered with the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches to present a national certifying exam, board exam, which I'm sitting for in a couple of weeks. The structure and the meaning of what it is to be a health coach is going to be more defined going forward. Licensure is probably on the horizon within the next few years, and we all need to be prepared for that. I think as that happens, practitioners will inherently start to understand better what a health coach is and does, and how to start using them in their practice. But it's going to be a transition for those of us who have been practicing for a while and have developed our own unique style. But I think learning to take off the expert hat, really step into the coach's role and own it, and be there as that guide on the side and that mentor. That's where our value lies. There's also an option or a possibility for us to be helping with assessments, or helping to kind of triage clients or patients. Sorry, my clients, their patients, in a way. So there's a lot that lies ahead. I would love to have an additional conversation on that. I think there's a lot to be discussed and shared, and we could definitely make that easier for people to step into the health coaching realm and those partnerships.
Well, that's perfect. I really want to pay attention to people's time. I knew we had very short windows of time with Dr. Dunn, who's actually up in New York getting filmed for a movie on these subjects. So it's just very exciting. Awesome. And Dr. Ernst and Dr. Rattay, and Amanda, and you too. I mean, this just happened to slip into a slot of time that you had available. And I really appreciate you leading the show here. You did a phenomenal job as always. And so I said if there was time available, I take people on a tour. I know a lot of you have been in the collaborative already. You've already had a tour. I want to pay attention to people's time. So we'll sign off now. And anybody who wants a personal tour of the collaborative, there's things that change in there every day. We've got a phenomenal new research library that we just put in there as another tool to help people ground their work in real case studies that they're doing, and then grind that into research. We're rapidly building this thing out more and more every day. So I encourage you to get in there, spread the word, tell people about what we're doing. There's also an aspect in there of helping you do the things that it takes to build your own personal brand and get that message out. I know Joe and Ralda are doing it within their community of practice, the health coaches community of practice, as are the nurse practitioners, as are the chiropractors, as are the physician's assistants. And that's beautiful to me, because that's we're seeing it play out. Or the original vision we have for this thing, we're seeing it play out every day, and it's getting richer and richer. So again, I want to thank everybody for your time. Dr. Dunn?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment, because I was thinking about the health coaches on here. We're teaching doctors how to do the genetic reports, look at the genetic results and design a diet and lifestyle and nutritional programs around their genetics. But a lot of the doctors don't have a lot of time to do that, or have a lot of knowledge, to be honest, especially like the chiropractors that are in our group. They may not have a lot of functional medicine background, but I think this would be a great opportunity for health coaches to say, hey, I'll take that patient. You give me the results. I'll take that patient. I'll guide them through their best diet and their supplementation, how to take it, how to stay on track. I'll handhold, like you said, Joe. I think that it could be a unique coming together of skills there that could be really good. So on that note, the training is starting tomorrow for the holistic methylation. And it's not just for physicians. Anybody can do it. And once you get trained in that work, you can advertise yourself to this group. We've already got 450 doctors around the country that do this, but again, don't have a lot of time for it. So you could say, hey, you know, I'm trained in that. I'd like to take on the role of babysitting your patient once they get these results. So just wanted to throw that out. It just occurred to me that that'd be a good, like a meeting of the minds for the health coaches.
I like
Beautiful.
that. I would tag on to that one thing, just that technically it is outside of the legal scope of a health coach to diagnose, treat, or prescribe. So to actually interpret those test results, while we may have the knowledge, there's a careful way to toe that line and bring the expertise in as we're coaching around diet and lifestyle, and find it. We found a great way here at Catalyst. Again, you know, they do a very brief, maybe 20-minute review of the test results and then hand that off to me. So that way it kind of gets around that. So just, again, I think it would be great to have a panel discussion on that. And I think that that's incredible training that you're offering and very, very valuable. Again, that was one of the absolute pivotal moments in my own health journey, was having that ability to know about methylation and some of the issues in my genes.
Yeah, for sure. But they would also be practicing under the doctor who got the results. So that would prevent them from having that issue of diagnosing or whatever. It'd just be.
We should hope. We would hope.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Amanda, for moderating today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure learning from you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Richard, for the opportunity.
Robin, thank you too. Thank you as
Thank
well.
you. Bye, everybody. Good to see everyone again.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Robin. Good to see you guys.
Great to see you. Best of
Thank
luck.
you.
for coming.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited. Good.